Hello, welcome back to Hampshire Fans Podcast. This is now our 7th episode, and we're going to be rounding up the latest championship games for Hampshire. And we're going to be joined by Phil Webb to talk about how these last few games have gone. Good evening, Phil.
Good evening, Ian. Yeah, lucky number 7. Well, or it might not be with some of our technical difficulties, but looking forward to going over what has been actually a pretty good month for Hampshire so far.
It has. I think we both certainly feel more positive than the last time we spoke back in sort of the middle of August when we were going over the bones of the T20, and we were a bit concerned about how the championship would shape up for the rest of the season. But 3 wins out of 4 means we're in a good place with 2 games to go.
Yeah, exactly. So we were talking on the eve, I think, of the final T20 game, and obviously wrap that up with a win. And then, we were. I think we were hesitant to be overly optimistic with how things were going to go, and then up against Nottingham, who were doing fairly well in the championship. Some of those, ever encroaching doubts were kind of hitting me already when we spiraled down to 137 for 7. And it wasn't until that Dawson partnership with Abbott turned things around that game really kind of took off for us, I think.
Yeah, it was a good game for Hampshire in that it was a real return to form for Kyle Abbott, who had sort of a difficult summer compared to the high standards that he'd set in last season as well as his previous spell in 2014. And it's when he just sort of started coming back to life. And where he's tended to have his best games with the ball, it also often coincides with him having a good run with the bat.
Mm. Yeah, I think he'd been relatively open as well with his struggles. Well, you see interviews with Kev on BBC Solent and a couple of articles in the Echo as well about how he hadn't quite been in the right place. But as we see over the next 4 games, he really has got back to the best that we've seen of him in a Hampshire shirt. But I think you've said or reflected that Edwards was quite an asset bowling up at Nottinghamshire as well.
Yeah, he was. I mean, I attended the game on the second and the final day. On that second morning, I think Notts resumed overnight at something like 3 or 4 down, which was set up by his good bowling on the Sunday night. And then on the Monday morning, he just carried on where he left off and was just absolutely steaming in to Nottinghamshire. It was helpful conditions. It wasn't particularly a bright day. The lights were on for some of it, but when he's in that form, he's absolutely fearless. In a funny sort of way, though, I was absolutely raving about his performance that day on Twitter. And those of you that follow us would have seen plenty of tweets from me about that. He hasn't quite managed to hit the same height since, which is a big shame. But Kyle Abbott and Dale Steyn have more than made up for that.
Yeah, you kind of you need at least 2 out of the 4 to kind of be firing, and I guess while perhaps in the latter games when he just hasn't needed to or hasn't necessarily had the opportunity to. But I mean that's credit to Steyn and Abbott of how good they've been. I think that's partly with the Essex loss. I think one of the things I was considering is that our bowling. I mean, bowling has been our strength compared to our batting this year. Don't get me wrong, but I think without Steyn in that Essex game, was it a little groin strain? I think he had.
It was, yeah. I mean, the Notts game. In fact, he bowled for a bit in the first innings and then pulled up just before he was about to deliver. And I think he was actually wicketless in that game. So we managed to beat Notts despite his absence, thanks to Edwards and Abbott, as well as Liam Dawson chipping in with 4 wickets. But we really, really missed out staying at Essex.
Yeah, I think when you're going in, if Fidel, some days he's on fire and some days he's not, and he can kind of go around the park, but he's that kind of strike bowler that when he's on fire, he will win you a game. But then we're fortunate that Abbott was returning to form at this point. But then when your third and fourth bowlers are a combination of, obviously depending on injury and fitness and everything, Holland, Berg, Wood, Stevenson, that kind of medium fast pace or not quite your, not top dollars kind of, but that intensity that Stain kind of brings, you know that you're going to struggle a little bit. And when Essex put on 400 plus, at that point we thought, oh well, it's clearly a 400 plus wicket. And then when we start batting and you start realising, maybe we didn't bowl so well. And that as a game was not unique, but given the conditions, that the whole first day was wiped out with it wasn't even that rain. I think it was just a bit drizzly and overcast, wasn't it? And then the damage was done for that first day.
Well, I went to Chelmsford for the second day, or what was the first day of play, and you got to walk on the outfield at lunch and tea, and this state of the outfield was pretty ropey. I'd say I've played on better park pitches than Chelmsford, or the state it was, and a couple of Essex members that I spoke to were also very critical of their ground staff, that felt they'd made a mistake somewhere along the lines, and that there's no way we should have lost a whole day's play. As it was, I mean, yeah, I would have been very annoyed if I'd travelled on that first day and not seen anything. I wasn't too unhappy, as I felt losing a day's play would basically do us a job and get us a draw. When I was at Chelmsford and bowling looked to be hard work, my concern, I did tweet this from the fan account, was that we could be vulnerable to harmer later in the game. And so it proved.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I sent this tweet out because I didn't want to tempt fate, but I might have popped something over to Solent. But I was just looking at, a 3-day game where a team's already put 400 on, thinking, well, there's no way that we can lose 20 wickets over the next, 2 days on a pitch. And either I tempted fate by not sending it, or I did send it and just brought all this kind of pain on ourselves. But yeah, having built up all that kind of good feeling of the win against Notts, particularly where, second innings when we were really dominating, and Vince sticks on 100, nearly 150, also falls one short, that we really put Notts to sword, and then to turn up and lose 20 wickets in the space of 48 hours or less. It's just that, when you're at that stage, we still thought we were definitely in a relegation battle. That's a real kind of body blow to the kind of confidence. But yeah, like you said, Harmer, he's as a kind of cold pack signing, he's an international quality bowler, and Siddle, on the back of his 6 wickets, I think, on the second innings and quite a few in the first, is actually popped back up into the Australian team. I mean, I know their squad's slightly depleted at the moment, but that's still it's still an international bowling attack of sorts. So I was trying to find some, pleasure in defeat there and explain it away. I'm not entirely sure I can.
No, but I would go along with that. I mean, I just thought Essex made 435. I think what I wanted to see from Hampshire was, even if they were all outs for... Basically, I just wanted them to see them go past 286, get past the follow-on target, get yourself 2 batting points, and then just kill the game as a draw. That that was all I was really interested in seeing us do. So even if we conceded a deficit of 140, there wouldn't have been the time in the game for Essex to set anything up. So it was really disappointing that we only managed to get 172. That meant that there were no batting points from that game, and we just took 2 points from the whole game. And as you've already said, I did feel quite flat after that defeat. Especially after a good win against Notts. Notts didn't look a particularly good side to me. Whereas, Essex were the sort of team we want to be beating if we were to make our way up the table. And it sort of made me a bit worried that in later games where we're playing perhaps a relegation struggler, we could be vulnerable to somebody wanting the points more than us. Notts just looked as sort of a bit like, oh, we've done enough, we're safe.
I was just going to say something very similar, actually, in terms of, they're at a point where I was just trying to drag up their stats, actually, but where they've lost 7. I think they were up near the top at the start of the season, so that must have been losing quite a few in a row, or at least relatively on the bounce at the moment. So, maybe I'm trying to can't call the Notts fan podcast and see what they say is why they're out of form, but couldn't tell you why. But so what wrapped up August with a defeat, pretty much, and then on the road again to the new road, Worcestershire. You headed up for a few days as well there, didn't you?
Yeah, I just went to one day, which was the second day. Again, with scores lately, you need to get yourself to the first or second day if you want to see any action, because it all happened. I think so I was at New Road on the second day, and I think something like 24 wickets fell.
Yeah.
So all the focus was on, I think, Taunton that particular week, with them having a game that was just short of 2 days, but the Worcestershire one wasn't much far behind it.
Yeah, and we witnessed a bit of personal history, at least for Kyle Abbott as well.
That's right, yeah, hat-trick just after tea. We'll probably talk more about that in a sec, but it was another game where I was listening to it on the first day, and I think we'd started really well with the bat. Ollie Soames made his first-class debut, and Kev James was talking quite positively about how he'd started, seeing off the new ball. But unfortunately, a collapse wasn't far away.
It never quite is it? Yeah, I was definitely encouraged by some of the things that Kev was saying about how Soames was bringing like quite a calm and controlled kind of presence in the opening partnership, which I think, we've certainly lacked. I thought it was quite interesting having Jimmy Adams coming in at 3. You've got an experienced opener there as well. So should a wicket fall early doors, you've got somebody coming in that isn't going to look to, can play an opener's kind of game, which I thought, actually, in all fairness, was the role that Alistair Cook was perhaps going to play prior to him actually kind of announcing his retirement. So maybe that's something for the seasoned pros to drop into 3. We had, despite Soames's kind of good start, we did go from 80 for 1 to 190 odd all out. So there's and on the back of the Essex defeat, there was that's the head in hands kind of moment. But then as most commentators kind of say, you can only really judge the pitch and the conditions situations once both teams are batted. And actually, when Worcestershire came out and are all out for 120, you think, well, actually, do you know what? 191, not all that bad. And it was some of the underpinning, I think, in both of our innings, actually. Just one person standing up, just not playing out time, but just that element of patience and playing the conditions and picking a shot. So, North East getting up to 50 to anchor our innings, the first innings, is such an asset. And actually, it's something he did again in the Somerset game as well, following up. So I don't think we've seen the best of North East yet, but I think there's glimpses of what he can actually do.
Yeah, I think he's just sort of taking his time. That I think that injury had a bigger impact on him, the finger injury from early this season. I think it's just taken him some time to bed in. But I think the good news is that he should be a fixture for some time to come in the Hampshire lineup, and I have got no sort of concerns about his form and longevity. Again, it was the second game in a row where we didn't pick up any batting points. I now see that we're the lowest scorer batting points wise in the division, with just 16 all season. We're not that far behind other teams that you look at the scorecards from elsewhere, and we aren't the only team with batting problems. But I don't know how they can be easily solved, because we're not sure about what's coming through. And I don't think it's easy to go out and sign a load of people either, because there's plenty of batsmen out there at the minute that are struggling. So
yeah, it's as much. Well, it's the kind of relative debates from like the county commentators and things are, is it about the pitches? Is it about the balls? Or is it about the kind of batsman's mindset and technique? Because of the, one day stuff, T20 stuff, that they just don't have that kind of level of discipline and patience and, ability to just sit and build and leave and keep leaving and just grind it out. So yeah, it's hard to say, isn't it? I think as well, we're not quite knowing what's coming through from the academy, because Soames himself, I don't think he's not an academy product as such. I mean, he has played in our second 11, but he's come through the universities program, and he's been dotted around at a couple of other places as well, making appearances here and there. I mean, if he's settling in to the Hampshire team, great. By the end of the season, unless he gets a couple of big scores, I don't think his average is going to be pretty good. But you have to view that in the context of, the pitches and time of year that he's actually been playing as well. So where he's the 2 games he's played, no team, I don't think any team scored above 200 anyway. So, his average is never going to be that high, particularly anyway.
Yeah, it's an absolute struggle, and people with the advent of T20 are questioning who would want to be a bowler. But for this time of year and for the championship, who would want to be a batsman? Because what you were saying just then about, was it the ball, was it T20? I think it's all of those factors. I've also seen in recent weeks quite a few people being bowled or LBW leaving the ball.
Yeah.
So they are trying to leave
big victim of those, yeah.
But it's the misjudgment, unfortunately, because the ball is doing something. There does seem to be something about the seam on the batch of Duke balls this year. But sometimes I don't know if teams are using that as an excuse or whatever. But I mean, the fortunate thing for Hampshire is that we've had some high quality bowling spells from Dale Steyn and Kyle Abbott in particular, that mean we've won 3 out of 4, and we're not quite there yet, but I would expect in the next few days for our survival to be confirmed.
Yeah, I think you worked out a few calculations, and it's you look at the table, and Worcestershire, as if only I'd put a bet on. Worcestershire are pretty much adrift at the bottom. They'd need kind of maximum points victories in both games. and even if Moeen Ali is back for them, you can't necessarily see any team sticking on 400 on the pitches at the moment, and with the way that kind of the ball's been moving around. And Lancashire have already played a game more, and they're, having lost to Yorkshire, they're pretty much adrift as well. So even if we just pick up a few bowling points here and there, we're pretty much safe. But that's not what we're aiming for anyway.
No.
Because and again, I should have put a bet on this. If Hampshire are gunning for third, and it's a definite possibility now, then we should be thinking about the wins, not about avoiding it. It doesn't. If we do finish third at the moment, it doesn't feel like we would have not deserved. It's the wrong way, but I kind of imagined we'd finish third after a noble challenge for the title, not finishing third because we're the best of the relegation candidates. Because Surrey have just run away with it anyway this year, haven't they? And Somerset, well, I mean, we I don't know if we thrashed them, but we dominated that game for the most part. And I don't know whether they going to even still be in a shout, but they seem to collapse pretty swiftly, or more swiftly than we do normally.
Yeah, I mean, that just sort of shows how difficult batting is at the minute. And, the spell where Kyle Abbott up at Worcestershire, where he took his hat-trick, he was absolutely unplayable. Daryl Mitchell, who seems to always score runs against Hampshire, was done first ball with just an absolute beauty. It's just one of those ones where he couldn't play. And I think, what did Abbott get figures-wise in that Worcestershire second innings? He got a 6 for something. And I felt that the 5 wickets that I saw there at New Road, there's almost nothing that Worcestershire batsmen could have done about that. Really good ball to remove Joe Clark, the first of his hat-trick victims. And then I think it was Ed Barnard, and I forget the other one that came out, and they're sort of lower middle order, even tail enders, and they just had no answer to him.
Yeah, well, getting rid of Daryl Mitchell. Daryl Mitchell's up there with Gary Ballance and Rory Burns as our kind of collective nemesis.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, I was absolutely delighted to see him walk off for a golden duck, and when the Hampshire on their way to 114-run victory, which, is a thrashing when you think that we've only managed to score 191 and 176 in our 2 innings. So the bowlers have definitely, again, got the batsmen out of trouble. And this has been a sort of feature of Hampshire cricket for a while. And every time we see a Hampshire collapse, there's obviously loads of angry tweets flying around that demand that everyone's sacked. But it's not easy, and it's not obvious to know what we could do, because you could very well sack everyone, but I'm not convinced that we could realistically sign any people that could guaranteed to improve the batting lineup. I think anyone you sign at the minute realistically is going to be somebody from Division 2 who you're hoping to take a bit of a punt on that they can step up. There's no certainties, and I think if they're at another county and they're batting well, then those counties will do everything they can to hang on to those players.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people that I've seen move, well, not move yet, but transfers and stuff have been announced, seem to be bowlers moving around from county to county. I think Gleech, I think we might have been in for him. I'm not sure, but he was a kind of prospect, at least bowling-wise, I think would have been quite handy to get. But yeah, there don't seem to be many batsmen moving around. I mean, Slater moved from Derby up to Notts. and Duckett has also gone up to Notts as well. I think either of them could have been handy for us. I don't know, in terms of business, what we're planning to do, if we are planning to do anything. Maybe trust in the youth, who knows? Maybe we've got a few more packs up our sleeve.
Yeah, it's quite possible. I think there's a lot to be decided. Yeah, I understand that we were interested in Gloucestershire's Liam Norwell. He's gone to Warwickshire. Gleeson's gone Northants to Lancs. I don't know. I understand we were interested, but how far was that interest pursued?
Yeah.
We don't know. So, and there could be still plenty of things to be decided. There could be, teams don't know which division they're going to be in next year. There's a three-way battle on at the moment in the second division for promotion. There's also, whilst Worcestershire and Lancashire look the most likely to go down, it's still not a certainty yet. So there's plenty of work to be done. We have made one signing, which is Nye Donald's going to come from Glamorgan. My understanding from speaking to a few people around the background is that he's more of a white ball signing. And whilst he may well feature in the Championship at some point, I get the feeling that they've more got their eye on the 50 over and T20 for him.
Okay. Yeah, well, he's one of the hottest prospects to come out of Glamorgan for a while. So, great signing. I kind of feel bad for Glamorgan because they're having an awful season and they're pretty much rooted near the bottom. They're bottom of Division 3 in the scheme of things, because you look at the four teams challenging near the top of Division 2, and then you look at the six kind of more also around. I think the that Don Topley wants to see go bust, and they are they're having a terrible time.
The thing was, Donald, I think there is an element of risk in this signing that. I was actually at his first class debut when Hampshire won the Division 2 title, and he's a very exciting player. I've seen him play on the telly. I've seen him in the T20 when they've come to the Ageas Bowl, but his stats yet don't reflect his ability. And it's possible that a move of club for him is, the best thing that he can do. But at the same time, it might be a case of he might not live up to the promise. And I think this is the thing that realistic signings for Hampshire that, it would have been nice. I like Gleeson as a bowler. I looked up his average. It's about 25 with the red ball in Division 2. Is he going to be able to step up? So whilst I think it was a shame to miss out on him, there still would have been an element of risk in that signing. So we need to be as sure as we can that anyone we bring in will improve the squad.
I just worry Fidel's not going to be able to go on forever. That's part of my, that's kind of in the background of my concern. And, Stein has obviously publicly said that he'd love to come back to Hampshire, whether he can or he does, or that's the overseas kind of signing that we want, because actually, I don't know, I quite enjoyed having Amler for a bit of batting certainty at the start, and you can't have both of them. So, who knows what our
Edwards'
overseas option will be as well.
After that sort of at Essex and at Worcester, he did look a bit weary. He's had a fantastic season. He's got something like 43 wickets at 28. And early on the season, when Abbott wasn't quite firing, Edwards has kept us competitive, I think. But it's starting to look a little bit tired now as the season goes on. And Gareth Berg's lost his place as well in recent games. Chance that he comes back for the last two now that Staines departed. But I'm sure he won't mind us saying that he's unfortunately nearer the end than the beginning. But there's still plenty of miles on his clock, I think. But
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can't say anything against Gareth. I love him too much. So, Holland's come in and done well though. At the same time, if when other people are given chances, they've got to take them. And Ian Holland he hasn't dominated with the ball, but he hasn't really had the chance to because Abbott and Stein have kind of taken the limelight. But he's
think
come in and bowled some really good spells.
Yeah, he's a good pro. He does a good job. At Essex, where the conditions weren't quite so favourable, he was less effective. But at New Road, as well as the recent home game with Somerset, he's been more than useful as a backup, and he's going to be the sort of bowler that will love the conditions at the moment. So it depends what Championship cricket goes like. That if we continue to have this thing of low-scoring 2-3 day games everywhere, then Hampshire aren't in too bad a place bowling-wise. And then it's almost like the concept of top order batting is basically redundant. You're just going out there. You've got almost like a no-win situation that sooner or later the conditions are going to get you out. And but the batsmen with April and September going to see so much Championship cricket. They need to find ways to adapt. Yeah, that Somerset game. Sorry, go.
Sorry,
go
no, carry on. No, that's what I was just going to lead us on to. The Somerset game.
I was unable to attend that one. And normally I try and go to the second and third day of Championship games, and due to the distance I travel, in a way it was probably a good thing I didn't, because was it over by tea on the second day?
Yeah. So I basically penciled in post work I can get down for tea most days, and Monday night just got in the car, picked my son up. We were gonna head down, and then I thought, it's a bit overcast. It might come off for light. Was that drizzle in the air? So didn't bother going. Definitely going to go the second day. Yeah, it was all over by then.
It's a remarkable game. It reminded me a bit of games at the Ageas Bowl in the early days when the pitch was still trying to settle in, where if you could get sort of 150 to 200, you were well in the game. What did we do? Somerset decided to... did they decide to bat?
Yeah, because we were chasing it down in the fourth. Yeah, Somerset batted first, 106, with Abbott and Stein basically taking, well, in summary, 18 wickets between them, and I think Holland picked up the other two.
So just thinking, if Abbott and the combined figures of Abbott and Stein for that match are 18 for 142, and Somerset only scored 222 runs in the match. So everyone else would be 2 for 80. Absolutely incredible. But it's good to win a low scoring game like that, and it was touch and go as well, because I think it was I mentioned kind of Northeast anchoring one of the innings. I think Worcestershire, he basically did the same with Dawson in our second innings. Well, no, sorry, our first innings, the second innings, because we got down to 68 for 6. And at that point, where we were up against 106, you thought, well, we're only 4 tail end wickets away from being about level. And actually, the two of them kind of guiding it, easing it through. And again, a low scoring game, we scored 50% more runs than they did in the first innings, and in a low scoring games, that's a huge advantage. Yeah, we were very concerned that although we'd got a lead of 42 in the first innings, when Somerset went out to try and set us a target, I think we tweeted about what sort of score would we be happy chasing, and I think most people didn't give us much of a chance if it was anything much over 100, and I would have gone along with that because it just seemed like something was happening constantly. It's just a really weird time.
On the back of that, the Somerset Lancashire tie as well, where they're chasing 74 and can't make it. You kind of it just put in my head, yeah, teams could not successfully chase 74. So what on earth is going on?
I think it was early in the season when Nottinghamshire were trying to chase 10, and they did it 4 down.
They're down, yeah.
And you just think, blimey, I wonder if there were Notts fans thinking, oh, if only we'd had 30 to defend or something like that. It's just absolutely incredible. Yeah. I've never known anything like it. It is weird. It is a bit concerning in that I don't think it's doing much good for 4-day cricket and the perceived quality of it. And fair enough, bowlers will say they've had the hard job for far too long, and it's about time they got on top. But it's probably going a bit too far the other way, isn't it?
Yeah, I think. Well, with the looming, threat of the 100 as well, because I've been doing some trials at. I'm not sure which ground it was, but I know a lot of that. Yeah, the press have been there and covering it, and I'm not even sure who's actually playing in it. I don't know if they've recruited some second 11 guys to go out there.
I think they got a mixture of some of the names like Ed Pollock, things like that, who play for Warwickshire but don't play Championship cricket very often. I think it's people like that. So they rooted people out from that, but that's probably a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
So it's it's utterly bizarre, but as things stand, we sit 4th. 2 games to play up at Yorkshire starting on Tuesday. Forecast isn't brilliant, but that'll hopefully mean that we can get, say, the bowling points that we need. A batting point would be nice. 5 for a draw. And then if we assume Worcestershire aren't going to get max points, then it's basically job done. And I think when we spoke at the start of the season, whilst we had our high hopes for 3rd, we both wanted to see a scenario where we knew by the last game what division we'd be playing in next year. And it looks like that's going to happen. So, a little round of applause there.
A very small round of applause. Yeah, like I said, not when you're going for 3rd, you were hoping that you were gunning for 1st and fall slightly short rather than, a resurgence out of a relegation spot. But can't complain too much. When history books are written, it will say we're in 3rd place if obviously we do finish in 3rd, and that won't tell the whole story, but it's still the 3rd best team out of 18, and still got a trophy in the bank already. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's sort of it's such a long season that we had, we've just seemed to have gone from high to low. I think it's a roller coaster season, and of course, the Lancashire, Worcestershire that are in the bottom 2 at the minute. Even if we come 6th, they would both gladly swap places with us.
Yeah, true. True.
It's certainly not been dull.
No, it hasn't. I was just thinking about Worcestershire. Actually, we were saying that would they swap with us? Obviously, they picked up the T20 prize at the weekend. Did you watch any of that?
Yeah, I watched all of it. Yeah, I was home, had a night out on Friday, so I shotgunned the sofa
recovered.
To watch all of it, and they were a really good side. I'm really pleased for them. They did the business, and
they remind me strangely of one of our first successful T20 teams kind of coming through, because the youth that they've got kind of reminded me of our generation of Wood, Vince Dawson, when they were of that age, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah, they sort of all announced themselves on the stage this season. And I think that's basically what happened with like Wood and Briggs in 2010 when Hampshire won it, that it was their first finals day and went all the way. So, yeah, I can see the similarities too.
Up and around for a good couple of years, I think, in T20 stakes at least. Yeah, so good luck to them. The only Hampshire showing on the day, personal interest in this, obviously Rory's success of sorts came. Well, I think he came fourth in the mascot race, but I'm pretty sure the Durham bear, lion, whatever it was, cheated. So I'm giving him third. So
what would you put Rory's improvement down to?
I think. Look, I've always said you've got to be first into the ball pit, because if you don't get into that ball pit first, you're going to struggle for the rest of the race. And whoever was powering Rory on Saturday did a pretty decent job. You've also got to look at the footwear, because some of them really cheat, and this really bugs me, because Rory's shoes are so clumpy you cannot run in them. And the year that Vinny the Viking won, he was basically wearing trainers, which no Vikings wear trainers. It's just not fair. But yeah, look, I've no idea who was in there, but they did a pretty decent job. And one of the reasons, obviously, they did better because it wasn't me. But there we go. Yeah, sorry, that was slightly off topic from more important cricketing matters. But I think we've wrapped up the games that we've had. I think we're looking optimistically to Yorkshire and Lancashire coming up, because while they've both got something to play for, their form isn't particularly good. You know, they're there for the taking, I think, particularly if our bowlers maintain the kind of form they're in. So, yeah, finishing on a high, I guess.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, yeah, we've won 3 out of the last 4, and we're a bit downbeat before the Nottinghamshire game that we could put in a performance like that. 4 wins matches the 4 wins that we got in the 2015 season, but that's of course with 2 fewer games. So it'd be nice to get a 5th or even a 6th win, because that would be our sort of best championship top division performance for about 10 years. So I'd like to see us win at least one of the next 2, just to really, finish on a high, rather than sort of our job done, we're safe, and then, just ease off a little bit. Of course, it'll be harder now Dale Staine's gone, but it's the chance for somebody else to try and step up and contribute.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary of what we've got ahead of us. I think that might be time to wrap things up completely, unless we've got any other business.
No, I think that's all good. I mean, of course, we've not really talked about it, but we mentioned Sean Irvine a lot in the last podcast, where we weren't sure what was happening with him. He ended up going to Derbyshire on loan, played a couple of games, but has decided to call it a day. And we wish him very well in his retirement. And of course, announced on the very same day, I think a few hours either side of each other, was Jimmy Adams announcing his retirement. And those 2 players have been basically Hampshire cricket for just about 15 years, haven't they?
Decade at least. I'm not sure. Irvine, when he not transferred his allegiance, but stopped playing for Zimbabwe and started committing full time to Hampshire. But yeah, they're iconic, certainly iconic in my Hampshire experience, because they have basically been ever present ever since I moved to Southampton and have started following Hampshire with a passion. So yeah, it's going to be. I mean, even this season's been slightly odd without seeing Irvine really around the team at all. So I mean, he's kind of, while we've talked about him a lot, he hasn't really been here this year to talk about that much. But yeah, Jimmy Adams is. Yeah, well, I think we should probably do a side special on looking at their careers.
I think so. Yeah, it'd be exactly the sort of thing we can put into our end of season podcast when we sort of get to do that late September, early October. So we'll touch on more about their careers, but and particular innings, and or the case of Irvine bowling spells as well. We can sort of give them a more fitting send off, but yeah, those two players won't be around next season, which is a shame. But there's the opportunity for someone else to put themselves up into the not all-time greats, but make themselves remembered as fondly as these two players will be.
Yeah. All right. I think we should say farewell. I am Phil Webb at Mr. Webb on Twitter. MR. Oh, no, I can't even spell my name. MRW3BB.
Yeah, and I'm at Ian Pearce 100. I'm not going to be up at Headingley this week, but should be around for a day or two of the Lancashire game.
Yeah.
Tweet us for your views. We'll be tweeting during the games as much as our day jobs allow. And send us your feedback. And we look forward to hearing from you. And we look forward to bringing you in a few weeks' time an end of season special.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Right. Cheerio.
Cheers. Bye.